Module 6. Conclusion. 8 key messages. Module 6 recaps the 8 key messages arising from the NJC experience discussed in these modules. These messages include taking a triaging approach to identifying cases requiring a therapeutic approach, the use of procedural justice approaches, the importance of building relationships between the court and treatment and support services, practical tips for working in a time-pressured court environment, the importance of maintaining judicial impartiality and ways in which to facilitate positive behavioural change in people who are on a deferred sentence or serving a community correction order. Good communication skills.
Good communication is a key skill to a therapeutic justice and procedural justice approach. Using active listening skills when the accused persons and others are speaking to the judicial officer, using plain English and language that is easily understood, explaining court orders and processes, making eye contact, being aware of and observing body language, speaking courteously and respectfully to all people within the court, being mindful and observant of cultural differences and literacy are all good examples of good communication that have been explored in these modules. These skills are paramount to perceptions that people have been treated fairly and have been heard by the court.
Benefits of a therapeutic approach.
The NJC and other magistrates' courts are required more and more to deal with a range of complex social issues such as drug and alcohol abuse, mental illness and other cognitive impairments that have resulted or are related to matters coming before the court. Cases involving family violence are also increasing. Therapeutic jurisprudence suggests that magistrates should look at legal problems more broadly, beyond the legal problems to the context of offending and the underlying causes of offending behaviour. Therapeutic jurisprudence advocates an approach whereby court processes can be used to improve the well-being of people who appear before the court by referring them to health and support services and by using processes or communication styles that promote well-being. The NJC has on-site treatment and support services, and many other magistrates' courts will also have access to at least some support services. Where possible, court processes can also be modified to minimise anti-therapeutic impacts, as long as it is not contrary to the rule of law or principles of procedural fairness. Techniques used at the NJC include using a less formal approach in court, such as having the accused person sit at the bar table next to their lawyer, being flexible when standing matters down when required, or using adjournments and deferring sentence to allow the person to resolve any outstanding issues that the court may then be able to take into account at sentencing. The court may also seek more information about the accused person, his or her background, the context of the offending, and the underlying causes of offending than in a traditional approach. This enables the court to be well informed and create more meaningful sentences that are ultimately aimed at addressing the underlying causes of offending, which simultaneously benefits the accused persons and better outcomes for the community.
Importance of procedural justice principles.
Research has consistently shown that procedural fairness encourages acceptance of court decisions and the compliance with the law. See Module 1. Principles of procedural justice are a key component of the approach of the NJC, and these principles can be applied in any court setting. Humanising the court experience, using plain language, explaining court orders, engaging in dialogue with the accused person, and giving them the opportunity to address the court are some of the key ways in which I and other magistrates who participated in the panel discussion so as to ensure procedural justice is accorded to people who appear before the court. Procedural justice principles also require that people who appear before the court should be treated with dignity and respect and accorded the opportunity in appropriate cases to find the solution to their own problems.
Building relationships with treatment and support services.
Treatment and support services are an invaluable resource to magistrates, and there are a number of ways in which they can be engaged to assist the court and the person appearing before the court. Building collaborative relationships with service and treatment providers can be particularly valuable in an environment when the treatment and support services may be relatively scarce. A collaborative team exists at the NJC, in other problem-solving courts, and to a more limited extent in other magistrates' courts. Ways in which to build relationships with treatment and support services include being welcoming and engagement the treatment or service provider in dialogue when they are in court, seeking to reinforce with the accused person the work they are already doing with these providers, the magistrate taking steps to familiarise him or herself with the provider's work, inviting them to speak to the court, and listening attentively to workers when they address the court and respecting their views. Knowledge of the different available resources in the court and the community is important, and this knowledge can be aided by the use of other court support services.
Working within time-pressured court environments.
Some magistrates may feel that they do not have sufficient time to take a therapeutic approach or conduct judicial reviews. However, it may be possible to do so even in a time-pressured court environment. The therapeutic approach in judicial reviews will not be necessary in every case. A triaging approach is needed to identify those cases which are most likely to benefit from a therapeutic and problem-solving approach. These cases are generally those where there are one or more issues such as drug or alcohol addiction, mental health or cognitive impairment, educational training, housing and accommodation, or other issues at play. A willingness or motivation to change, evidence of a support network and available resources targeting the relevant issues are also key. Defence counsel and the prosecution can also be used to identify relevant cases. The NJC is a busy court that conducts up to 8 to 10 judicial reviews and 15 to 20 deferred sentences per week. 2 judicial reviews are generally held before the general court list commences and immediately after the lunch recess. Deferred sentences are heard in the general list. It is my experience that conducting judicial reviews requires a focused and purposeful use of time, not a long time. Each judicial officer can obviously determine the optimum amount of time to spend in a review, but 5 to 7 minutes is often sufficient. Judicial officers may also consider listing judicial reviews or deferred sentences together on part-heard days. Judicial reviews should seek to discuss or address only 1 or 2 aspects of the person's rehabilitation in order to cover those issues well and to ensure that the person has clear understanding of what they have committed to do between then and the next review.
Building a collaborative non-adversarial court team.
The NJC uses a collaborative team approach to cases that come before the court. This involves designated prosecutors and lawyers, a neighbourhood justice officer, as well as working with on-site treatment and support service providers in the client services team. Other courts can seek to create a collaborative team approach by seeking to work more collaboratively with lawyers and prosecutors, as well as treatment and service providers, and to encourage them to also work together. Magistrates can encourage all those who come within the courtroom to treat the accused person with respect, as well as other professionals and workers. A collaborative team approach does not mean that judicial independence, the rule of law, or procedural fairness are not observed or are mutually exclusive concepts, as is discussed in the next point.
Maintaining judicial impartiality.
The judicial role has changed in recent years and will continue to evolve. Many judicial officers are now working more closely with lawyers, prosecutors, court staff, and treatment and service providers as they seek to assist people appearing before the court to resolve the underlying causes of offending. The NJC and other problem-solving courts have a more formalised collaborative court teams and it is important that judicial officers are mindful in these contexts and in other magistrates' courts not to discard all legal formality. Judicial officers must be mindful not to discuss cases that are currently before the court with other members of the court team outside the courtroom. Regular meetings to discuss process and communication and setting communication protocols can be useful to ensure that all members of the court team understand these constraints.
Facilitating positive behavioural change.
The aim of the judicial techniques used in the NJC is to assist offenders to make positive behavioural change rather than solving the problems of offenders. This might be described as a solution-focused approach to sentencing, but also accords with the principles of therapeutic jurisprudence and procedural justice. Therapeutic jurisprudence suggests that using techniques that promote intrinsic or internal mechanisms of change, such as self-determination, self-efficacy, choice and active involvement in the decisions relating to their rehabilitation, are likely to be more effective in achieving long-term behavioural change than by imposing coercive measures to achieve change. Further, procedural justice principles suggest that those people who feel that they have been accorded voice, validation, dignity and respect, and have been involved in creating the solutions to their own problems with the support of the court, are more likely to comply with the law. Deferred sentencing and judicial reviews and good communication skills such as active listening are integral to the approach at the NJC and in other magistrates' courts. Judicial monitoring reviews and deferred sentences are best focused on the progress that a person is making towards their rehabilitation and addressing their underlying causes of offending. Purely focusing on compliance with the order is a short-term focus that is unlikely to have benefits to the community beyond the life of an order, whereas encouraging the person to work on the underlying causes of their offending is far more likely to have long-term effects on reoffending.
Module 6 also includes the following resources: background materials, resource lists,